So Ganesh,
Yeah.
thanks for being on Integral Yoga Podcast. How's today going for you?
It's good. We've been down at the farm spreading compost, and Matthew, who lives here at Yogaville, his parents were visiting today. And Karuna brought some cookies down, and we sat under the apple trees and had cookies and lemon water. So it's been a good day.
How do you enjoy being on the farm? Pretty much daily, right?
Yeah,
How does that serve you? How do you feel about that?
it's the best thing. Before that, I lived in the box world, where a lot of people live, where you're in the box of your house, and then you walk to the box of your car, and you drive to the box of your workplace, and then at lunch you get back in the box of your car, and you go to the box of the restaurant, and the box of the car, and the box of the workplace, and then the box of the car, and then back to the box of the house, and look at the box of the TV. And, I'm outdoors all day, every day. And I have lived in front of a computer before, so this is Candyland for me.
When you were a child growing up, did you spend a lot of time outdoors as well?
Yeah, I lived on the outskirts of a small town, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and there was a woodland all around about 100 yards from my house, a large amount of woods and a creek, and the neighbor kids, we all went down and played in the woods all day. No fear, just come back out of the woods at dinner time, and it was all good,
Can you remember like how that felt as
Yeah.
a child, just kind of running through the woods and exploring in nature?
I do.
What type of feeling does that evoke for you?
I remember one thing. There was a very steep hill going down to this creek at the base of the hill. James Taylor lived in that town, and he wrote a song about that very creek called Copper Line. He was living 2 miles down the creek from where we were. And there was a channel between two parts of the hill, and it was filled with leaves to about 6 feet deep. And it was very steep, and we would just go get in that, and we would slide down the hill completely encased in dry leaves with the beautiful smells of leaves, screaming, it was so great.
So
Catching crawdads, in little jars in the creek, and I don't know, chasing butterflies, throwing marbles in the dirt streets where I lived.
So how do you think we got to this place where so many humans are living in the box world? Was something unsatisfying of more of a kind of a primal existence, being out in nature, and something had to change for people?
I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I just know repeat. I'm a Gemini. I synthesize. I take in information and send it back out with a twist, maybe you could say. But one of the things I heard, and I don't know if this is exactly true, but that when you're in nature, you're having, I don't remember the exact number, but a huge number of different experiences, sensual experiences through your eyes, nose, ears, mouth, hands, everything. Just rolling around in the field, or playing with an animal, playing with your dog in the yard, you're outdoors, all these different experiences. If you watch the same experience on TV, you know how many you're having? One. Your body is relating to one experience. No matter what the picture on the TV changes, you're just having a single experience as opposed to like 10,000 a minute or something. So something's definitely lost. I don't know what's gained, from being plugged in all the time. I definitely prefer nature.
It almost seems that we need another word too, perhaps, from separating like nature and what is not nature. Because my question is like, what isn't nature? Because it's all earth matter. Everything that we see is earth matter. So in a way, everything is nature, right? But there is also a difference between what you're talking about, being in the open air and in the woods, as opposed to being confined to walls and all of that. Any thoughts on kind of how we tend to label, nature versus not nature? And maybe it would be helpful if we started to see everything as nature as opposed to creating this separation?
I mean, this is rocks, I guess, or is it plastic? I don't know. Is it petroleum? What is this mic made of?
Probably mostly plastic. So
Is it plastic? Or there's some metal
right.
here. Metal would be probably squeezed out of rocks. It's the difference between, like in farming, if you eat tomatoes, do you like tomatoes?
Mm-hmm.
I love tomatoes. I didn't used to, I do now. But I love them since I started eating heirloom tomatoes. And heirloom tomatoes are tomatoes that have a direct connection going all the way back to the past. Like the seeds are saved from every tomato harvest, and then they plant those same seeds, and if you plant those seeds, you get the same tomato the next year. With hybridization, you could say in a way that all this is hybridized rocks, hybridized oil that somewhere should be under the ground, maybe. Their man has come and manipulated natural elements to create something that isn't the same as it is in its natural form. Heirloom tomatoes taste wonderful. Hybrid tomatoes taste like not very good. And so that alone causes me as a farmer to grow heirloom tomatoes only, just for the flavor, but also it's a statement. People take that very far in farming. Some people save all their own seeds so they can have complete control over the kind of crops that they're growing, and thank God for them. I do buy seeds, organic seeds from seed companies.
So then is the issue maybe too much meddling? Is that what's going on maybe? Is we're meddling with nature
Yeah.
more than we need to be?
Control freaks.
Hmm.
That's humans. You know, in the Taoist way of thinking, man tried to blend with nature on nature's terms. And those Taoist monks would go into the mountains in southern China, and there was one quote, there's a man who writes poetry, beautiful, named Red Pine, and he speaks fluent Chinese, and he's spent his whole life recovering texts from ancient China and translating them into easily understandable English. And he did one book where he went down to find the actual Taoist monks that were still alive in, 1995, or I don't know when the book was written. But they're still there, and he was interviewing one, and he said, this is the life. This monk said he's living up there in a rock cave in a very cold environment, and he said, this is the life. My only regret is that my body can only handle it for 60 years. And then he goes down the hill and lives in the monastery. But that being in touch with nature, the coldness, you feel the coldness, the heat, you feel the heat. The sounds of the bamboo rustling on the roof of your shack, you hear that. The wild animals that crawl around your door. That's being in nature. It's not complicated. It's very simple, really. And then when you're in a sheetrock room, none of that is going on. You're more, quote, comfortable, unquote. And it's really, the tension is between comfortable at your own expense, the slow death of comfort, versus the aliveness of bitter. Anybody can find this out by taking an ice cold shower. I'm sounding like I know. I don't take ice cold showers. I take hot showers. In summer I take ice cold showers, but I wish I was a little bit more of a mensch and I would take cold showers every time. I'd have to be a little stronger, a little tougher, because when you take a cold shower, you can feel it. It's just a direct experience. All the cells in your body are going, yippee. Everything is more alive. Maybe you tense up for a second, but you can train yourself to not tense up. You can train yourself to just relax into ice cold water. And your whole body comes to life. They even have treatments in Hollywood for freezing you for 20 seconds just so that your body gets like that reaction of tightening everything up and getting more young. And I think that's one great example of it, ice cold showers. And it's a choice between ice cold showers being bitter, warm showers being sweet. Cake is being sweet, pine needle tea is bitter, or it doesn't have to be something as extreme as pine needle tea. Green tea is a little bitter. Coffee straight, coffee with cream and sugar. That's nature versus what man creates. Man lets its ego mind drag it towards a situation of comfort, which isn't necessarily beneficial to the whole being, and I don't think beneficial to the body.
So have we overlooked the benefit of being challenged, perhaps, right? Because many of these things have come to pass because of comfort, as you're saying, comfort and security. And so have we missed something of our need to constantly be challenged and be in the elements and experience what's hard, perhaps?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, there's like, nobody is having an easy life. Being in traffic, breathing toxic fumes, fighting your way across a city to get to an office that's may or may not be run in a pleasant way. That's hard. It's really hard. I would say it's unpleasant, but it's unpleasant in a way because you're being pulled from something more natural, which could be hard in a more of a real way than just a toxic way. Like here, we have clean air, clean water, I hope, unless the pipeline goes through. Clean air, clean water, a pleasant native environment. The trees are good, the bugs aren't too bad, the sky is blue, the sun is shining, it's hot in summer, cold in winter. That's all challenging in a way when you put yourself out in it. You sweat when it's hot, you wear thicker clothes when it's cold, but it's not challenging in a toxic way. It's challenging in a health-giving way. I think your body responds to that because that's its natural environment.
It feels really tricky navigating these waters in our lives today, right? Because where do you draw the line, right? So am I not going to use all of the technological advances I have at my disposal to cook my meals and sit inside and have some of those comforts? Like, it seems that there is a place for it, but the question is how much, and am I doing that all the time to the detriment of my relationship to being outside in nature? So how do you personally navigate these waters, or saying, I'm not going to turn my back on, technology or the modern age completely, but at the same time, I'm prioritizing, being in the field, working, being outside, all of that?
I think everybody's mind is different, and some people are able to just make up their mind to do something, and then they just do it. No questions asked. Most people, I would say, certainly myself included, there's a little struggle in there, to get up for morning meditation on a cold day at 6 o'clock. You've been to a lot of meditations. You know that the pranayama first thing in the morning wakes up the mind. You know that you have a really clear-cut segment of time early in the day to look at your mind and see if it's running you or you're hopefully running it more. Those kind of things are hard, but they're certainly worth doing no matter what. But for me, I still have to fight every morning. I know people who never even think about it. They just get up, put on their shoes, put on their coat, go out the door, boom. There's no debate. So everybody falls probably into that continuum somewhere of how much they struggle with their own mind. So for me, I'm, somewhere in the middle. I'm the one talking right now. I have border collies, 2 border collies, and they got to walk twice a day, and they make no bones about it. You're going to walk 4 miles a day, period, because you have border collies and they won't let you not walk. I mean, you'd have to have them to know what I mean. That's just the way it is. So I'm going to be out walking 4 miles a day. I have a job that's outdoors that I have to do. Would I choose to go outdoors in the rain? No, I wouldn't. But I have to. I have a shift. So I've arranged my life so I have to get outdoors that much every day. That's sort of a workaround that somebody who doesn't have as much willpower maybe as the next person uses to kind of herd themselves into living the kind of life that they wish they could live. But I don't. Maybe I'd rather be a person with a giant willpower that could just do it without any circumstances that I needed to create to force me to do it. I don't care. I'm doing it. That's what matters. And anybody can do that. Anybody can create the situation they want for themselves, I think, really. I mean, I used to live on 240 acres. This was a long time ago. And I was paying $25 a month rent because I didn't have running water. And the person renting the little shack in the beauty of the Missouri countryside was embarrassed to ask more than $25 a month for something without running water. And I thought I was leading the life of Riley, and there was a lot of being indoors, outdoors, firewood, the swimming hole, the outhouse, all of that. And that's the old-timey life right there. All of that was built into my life so that my body-mind got used to that. If I was living in Chicago, none of that would have happened, or any city.
What do you think when you see, the picture of these cities and all the skyscrapers, and you don't see any green, and we even post them on television as if they're something to be extremely admired. I mean, I guess there is something to admire in the feat of the construction and all of that, but isn't it interesting, these giant buildings with just humans stacked on top of humans living together in the box, and we're choosing to do it?
If you take the 50,000-foot view, just imagine pollution, for instance. And if you could see pollution clearly, I mean, you can actually, of course. You get on a mountain 50 miles from a city and you can see the brown haze, or if you come into the airport, you can see it. But that's it. It's like none of that. And then as you get closer to the large group of people living together, the amount of pollution rises like a big ball around that living space. And everybody's living in that ball of pollution. I love cities. I lived in New York for a year, love it. And my wife and I spent 3 months of a year off in San Francisco doing Tai Chi, and that's the best city I've ever been in. I mean, you can't afford it, but unless you're living in a yoga ashram. But it's great. Walk everywhere. We were walking 6 miles a day. And city life doesn't have to be bad. It's what you make it, just like everything else. If you get enough exercise and you're doing hatha twice a day and some pranayama, it's fine. You don't have to be in the country. I like the country. But I think you can have a good life in the city.
And having a good life, too, I think you were speaking about commitments, making commitments. And so can our commitments assist us in living the types of lives that we want, right? So you commit to a job of being on a farm. Therefore, even when it's raining outside, because you've made that commitment, you're going to go anyway, and you're going to be outside. Or you committed to being the safekeeper, the owner of 2 dogs. So therefore, they need a walk, no bones about it. Is that a healthy way, do you think, to look at the idea of commitment, that by committing, it's going to assist me in leading the type of life that I want?
Well, we were talking about the human capacity, or I don't want capacity, the human proclivity to debate what's going on. Like somebody could be in a situation that other people might really envy. You might have a beautiful situation, family life, community to live in, whatever, and other people might be seeing that as some kind of restrictive environment. So I think it's important. Everything is what, this sounds simplistic, but really you put a certain kind of, I think, you put a certain kind of energy into everything that you do. And that's what creates the world that you live in. Like if, for me, I have a strong commitment to the farm, but it's not like an oh no or I hate this commitment. It's joy. I'm emotionally committed to the whole thing as a big unit. I'm committed to all the individual fields, that how they can remain healthy and the soil can remain healthy, and all the things that I have to do that if I don't do, there's a lot of timing and farming, all the things that need to be done to keep each field healthy. Then each of the rows has a different kind of plant, and I'm committed to each of those rows specifically and all the plants in that row. And then you have to start one by one each of the individual plants, and I'm committed to all those plants. It's I don't I've and I I'm learning to do that, Avi. It's like I went to town one time, my first year of farming, and I had 2,000 plants in the hoop house. And what did I know? I was just going to go to town for a minute, and then I got distracted, and I came back, and the temperature suddenly went 20 degrees higher than it was supposed to in May, and every single plant was dead. And I had to just really struggle to get through that farm year. You can't make mistakes. If you've got a kid, you can't forget the kid at the laundromat. You know what I mean? You have, your commitment is real. And it is important, I think, to pick the things that you choose to get committed to and make sure they're directions that you want to put your life force into. And once you make that commitment and once you're sending your juice down that channel, just go 100%. What else can you do? And pick things that are going to be healthy for you and everybody else.
So I want to ask you about fasting, and maybe even this ties into that. What's your personal practice of fasting? And yeah, how does that relate to making a commitment? Do you make a commitment to fast for a certain period of time? And what have you noticed from fasting yourself?
Well, let's see. I've been fasting off and on for 45 years or something. And, oh, excuse me. Matcha. So I've done it every way. I've done horrible fasts. When I first started, I don't want to get into the details, but I didn't have a very clean lifestyle, but I had willpower when it came to fasting. I would just quit eating and drink water for 10 days and then just start back into my wrong living pattern.
10 days.
Yeah, that's a long fast. That's about as much as I ever have done. Some people go further. But that wasn't necessarily healthy. It's like everybody's body is different, so it's hard to make generalizations about fasting. What Integral Yoga recommends, what Swamiji Satchidananda recommended, was 1 day a week fast. I think Thursday is when we do it here. And you just go to sleep, wake up, and don't eat during that 1 day. Go to sleep, wake up, and then begin to eat as normal the next day. And I don't know how much that does for your body. I think that's more for your mind, is what he intended in recommending that. Because 1 day a week, you prove, where the rubber meets the road, that you are controlling your mind and your mind's not controlling you on some level. When your mind says, eat that cheese sandwich, you are not going to do it for that day. And so you develop your personal power by fasting 1 day a week. What I've found about fasting is that fasting is a kind of hitting the reset button. That's what it is for me. Gurdjieff also recommended a 3-day fast, which would be probably more like eat vegetables, like just eat salad one day, once or twice. And then the next day you have like fruit juice. The next day you have water. The next day you have fruit juice. And the next day you go back to salad. And then you go back to eating as normal. When I fast, I feel like on a fast more than one day, which is really just a hiccup in a way. But when you begin to fast for multiple days, I feel like I'm in a boat leaving the shore, kind of. And the shore gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you get further and further out into the ocean. And then at a certain point, you don't even see the shore. And a longer fast is like that. You have to prepare. You need it. Ideally for fasting, like I said, some people probably shouldn't ever fast for 10 days. I mean, it's not for everyone. 3 days I don't think would hurt anyone. But you have to know yourself, and you have to know what type of body you are and how you handle a one-day fast. So I would suggest try a one-day fast and just see how that is. If you're hypoglycemic or something, not having anything to burn might be not healthy for you. And one thing that integral yoga makes clear is don't do things that hurt you, We love our bodies and we're out to take care of them, Don't, like, just because you saw somebody in a picture sitting a certain way with their feet on top of their thighs. Yeah, so that was maybe perfect for that person, but you could completely trash your knee doing that. So don't do it, Like I used to try to sit for meditation in a comfortable seated position, but with just a little cushion because that was more Spartan or something. Now you should see me. I build myself like a little throne out of cushions, so that I'm completely relaxed. So, like Morgananda says, sometimes the easy way is hard enough, because it's not about how you look when you're meditating. It's about whether or not your spine is straight and whether or not you can comfortably maintain that position. And then maybe gradually I get more flexible and I can use less cushions or whatever. But fasting is like that. Everybody's body is different. Know that. So you can't make blanket statements about fasting. But you're leaving the shore. The first day you're a certain distance away. Food is still there. The shore is food, all right, solid food. You're this far away from it. You see it. You want it. You're thinking about it. You go further out. You can still see it. You still want it. You might be getting desperate. You might be thinking, oh, I'm 2 days away from it. I have to be getting back now. The third day, it's like pretty much just like a little thing on the horizon. And then on day 4, you don't, I'm talking about myself. You don't want food. Why? You're as high as a kite, naturally. When you breathe, you can feel the air inside your lungs. I find fasting to be amazing for pranayama. You can feel the air going into your nose, down into your lungs. Your breathing is relaxed. There's no constrictions. There's no, it's just easy to be very aware of your breath when you're fasting, and you can almost taste the air. You smell everything a lot more, the flowers, you hear things better. Everything is just a little bit juicier when you're fasting, I find. The feeling of the breeze on your face is wonderful. And then by day 5, you wonder why people are eating. You're going like, gosh, don't you know that's just going to bring you down, And then it's getting a little bit like, better think about where you're at. And then day 6, 7, 8, 9, those kind of long fasts, you do forget all about food. Food is not an issue at all. But breaking the fast, a long fast, food is definitely an issue. When you begin to consume food again, you really have to have some self-control or you can do yourself damage. You need to come back as slowly as you went out. You can't just dive back to the shore. You have to gradually, carefully bring your boat back to shore in as long a period as you've been fasting. So that's the caveat for a long fast. You have to have some willpower when you break it, even though you're not hungry on the whole second half of the fast. What I would recommend in fasting is to just not be in a stressful situation. Don't be driving in traffic at 70 miles an hour on the LA freeway, just find a kind of a peaceful zone, do some yard work, like maybe you would have something to do so you're not thinking about food all the time, because then you're just focusing on food even though you're not eating it. So have some interesting things to do, have some books to read, go for long walks, have some yard work to do or whatever is fun for you, but not a lot of pressure while you're fasting. And then you can just be, but you don't want blank periods, a lot of blank periods where you're just sitting on the sofa staring at the refrigerator, Mm-hmm. So stay active when you're fasting, but not heavy labor necessarily on a longer 2 or 3 day fast. Try to find a space where you're busy but not laboring or stressing. And go to bed early, get up early, do a lot of sadhana.
Do you ever experience a sadness when a fast is over, and you've come back to the shore, you've come back to food, and almost a longing to be back out at sea again?
I mentioned that I think of it as a reset. If you want to, I've used longer fasts. I don't do long fasts very much, by the way, like once a year max. But when I do that, it's usually, I have a reason to be doing it. Usually I really want to change my personal habits. It's a perfect time to change your personal habits when you're fasting. Like, I was a smoker in my 20s, smoked cigarettes. Horrible, horrible habit. And, I had to try several times to break that. It was like a bad addiction. And finally, the way I got rid of the cigarette habit was through fasting. Because if you fast for a few days, you quit cigarettes and you quit food at the same time, for all you smokers out there in Radio Land, if you want to quit smoking, and you should, when you quit cigarettes and quit food at the same time, then you have the real thing that you're missing is competing with the negative, destructive thing that you're missing. So drink tons of water and juice, and you're detoxing all your poison from the cigarettes, and you're fasting at the same time, which speeds up the detoxing. Now, here's where I'm getting into shaky ground, because this is just something that worked for me. Somebody else's liver might not be happy doing this, and 1,000 doctors might say, don't listen to that. This did work for me because I wanted food more than I wanted a cigarette. And it put things into perspective in a kind of a way. And then once you get through the physical detox of smoking cigarettes, which is a couple weeks, and then, or maybe it's more, but it seemed like a couple weeks, then your body can begin to rebuild. And one thing I've heard about fasting, and once again, I don't know that this is true, but that is that your body is rough. This is a generalization, okay? But your body is made up of 3 different kinds of cells. Cells that are just being created, in general, of all the different types of cells. They're just being created, and they're young, vital cells coming into your body. They're sustaining cells, 50%, and then there's cells that are dying, and those are the stragglers and the dying cells in your body. And when you fast, you begin to eat your own body to some degree at a certain point after a certain number of days. And what part of your body? All the diseases are in the straggler cells. or, cancer, all of that lives in the straggler cells, the dying cells. And your body begins to burn through those cells. It doesn't eat the newly born cells, it eats the dying cells. So that's the way that you cleanse yourself. One of the ways when you're fasting is your body gets rid of the dying cells. So if a doctor is listening to this and I'm completely wrong about that, all I can say is I'm not an expert. Somebody just told me that. But I feel like that might be true because you do feel very cleansed and renewed on an almost cellular level from fasting. I do. So, yeah.
Yeah, from my experience too, I think, and maybe most people, when you get sick, you don't have that appetite that you normally have. So maybe that's even the body's message saying, stop eating, give me a chance to heal.
Yeah.
Right. How about just like shorter fastings too? I myself haven't done a really long one like that, but for a good number of years now, once a week, I fast. And although I haven't kind of experienced those higher levels, and
But how has that been? Has it been?
it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life to commit to doing that. The way it breaks up my week, and it seems that even if it's for a short period of time, that my intuition tells me that the body needs a rest. The digestive system needs a bit of a rest to go 3 meals a day, every single day for so many years without everything. What doesn't need a rest? To me, that makes a lot of sense, and it's definitely been beneficial. Yeah.
That's the hardest kind, I think, because I mean, I wish I could do that, what you're doing, and it's sort of one of my goals. Karuna and I are thinking of doing just what you're doing. I mean, we can do a long fast, but sporadically and take 3 weeks to psych ourselves up and do it and all that. But I think you're probably getting much more benefit because just your willpower is getting very strong every week. You are the master of your mind for that day, and every week you prove it. And that gives you a lot of personal power, I would say. It's something I want to do, but it's very hard for me to repeat that weekly, I think, but I want to. I'm going to try it.
In terms of commitment, I found that's been really helpful is speaking the words out loud. So it's one thing to think, okay, I'm not going to eat tomorrow. But if I say out loud, I'm not going to eat any food tomorrow, almost definitely I will follow that. Right? So I don't know have you experienced anything like that, the power of speaking something out loud?
You seem like I took this thing, the forum once, and they said, you are your word in that, and you seem like a man that believes that. You live by that, don't you?
Mostly. I mean, there's exceptions too, and I allow myself to have exceptions, but yeah, generally speaking, I think that's how we form relationships. I guess it's just a natural desire I have to comply with my word. If I say I'm going to do something, then I plan to do it, and hopefully others do as well. It definitely makes having a relationship a lot better.
Oh, yeah.
If we can do that.
That's so important,
But just as a thing, I mean, because it's not just me, because
Well, most people don't do that, Avi. You know that. Most people give their word and say, I'm going to fast tomorrow, and then by 10 o'clock, they got to have something, And that's the struggle of most people. You're a strong person. You say, I'm going to do it. It's done. It would take something unusual for you to not be your word.
Yeah, the mind will try to play tricks. In addition to that, now I've during the week, I set up all sorts of stuff for myself, getting into my own practices now. On the weekends, I let myself go, but now during the week, I won't eat until lunch most of the time. And again, I'll say it like the night before. I'll say, okay, tomorrow I'm not going to eat until lunch. But yeah, like today there was a test. I was at a meeting and someone was handing out, chocolates to everyone. And they looked amazing. They looked great. It's just like, well, it's already 12 o'clock. It's not quite lunch yet. Is that late enough? But there's the games of life that we play. Yeah. But I mean, I'd like to ask you about self-care too, because to me that's vitally important. In this kind of thing that we're talking about now too, is like, even if I do break my word, to me, that's not a big deal, and I think because it's not a big deal, I'm able to honor my word a lot more.
Wait, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So if something comes up where, okay, I said I was going to do something, and then there's some other circumstances that I hadn't planned for that come in the way, and I have to deviate from my plan or from my word. I have to break my word. Basically saying to okay, something happened, you're allowed to. So I don't make too big of a deal if I don't honor something. By not making too big of a deal, I seem to be able to honor my word a lot more. As opposed to if I was going to berate myself, oh, you're a bad person, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. The word suppression comes there. Something happens there where it's like playing games, tricks with yourself, where this like, oh, I'm bad, oh, I'm good type of thing, as opposed to accepting everything and even seeing myself as my own safekeeper, which is this idea I'm very interested. I was talking to someone else about it, even having dialogue with yourself, in the third person, which is a very odd thing to say. So it's like, okay, Ganesh, you did a nice job today, exactly what you wanted to, or, well, that wasn't exactly maybe as good as you could have done, try a little bit better. Like the way that you would speak to a child that you were trying to nurture a little bit. I think someone else put it as a ways that we have to become our own parents.
Yeah. That, I mean, I got to tell you this. It's like, I don't know if you've done Vipassana 10-day retreat. When I did that, the first time I did that, I had no idea what I was getting into. And I was so not ready for 11 hours of meditation a day. It put me into a very wild place, I would say, after about 5 days of that. And I created the separation between my true self, or whatever it is that you are, I don't think there's words for it, and the voice box in your head, in my head, I'm talking about the mind. And I saw that mind as a big dog, fully grown dog that I had never trained. And it was now pooping on the couch and tearing the curtains up and ruining my life, and I had no control over it. And it was bad. And it was my fault that it was bad. That's how I felt about my thinking apparatus. And after struggling with that for a few days in silence and sitting all day long, I realized it's exactly what you said. It's like you're a parent and that's your child, and you would always love your child no matter what first, and then get into the behavior. And I think if you treat yourself that same way, well, it's just what you said, but I had the same experience. If you treat yourself with love at the core level, like I love myself first, and then you begin to deal with the behavior, it doesn't turn into some masochistic, self-berating, downward spiral like it could.
And I think also to understand that what is going to happen if I don't love myself? That's not going to that's not going to benefit anyone.
Right.
Right? I think if there are issues that we see out there happening that are very common with people, to me it's clear that most of them are stemming from a cause that is people not really loving themselves, actually genuine self-acceptance and self-care. And so I see that as a clear path toward kind of getting us to the place that we need to go, understanding that if I don't love myself, that's going to be bad for everyone else around me.
Yeah, that's right.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this content and think others might as well, please feel free to share and subscribe.